My name is Andy Fetyko. I'm the chairman of EverWell Health Systems. We house the seriously mentally ill across California, and we're looking to go into other states as well as they invite us. We interview probably 3 to 5 states a year to see if they're interested in bringing a therapeutic community model to their state. I need to project more. Okay. I have three panelists with us. We have the Treasurer of California, Fiona Ma. We have Aaron Ortiz from La Familia, and we have Dr. Zubiotti from EverWell. I wanted to, I heard Madam Treasurer a few weeks ago, and I felt her frustration in a speech she was delivering about deal flow. She expressed finding deals for the money that she has in the size which would be ideal to put the money out is difficult. I wanted to introduce her to the IvyFON crowd because we were successful in our early raise with Marty's group, very successful. And I don't know, 10, 11 years later, now we are the second, we're a very large provider in the state of California for mental health live-in treatment. I want to dispel a few things here in the beginning that the people in this room generally are family offices, and generally they're going to have a certain number of a certain amount of their portfolio allocated to real estate. That's why this is important. The state of California has several buckets that are overflowing with money to put out. We consider this an effort aimed at finding the right bed for the right amount of time for anyone who's seeking a home in the most generous state in the nation and perhaps the world. I thought it would be interesting to discuss the mechanics of creating mega deal flow instead of the trickle effect the average citizen perceives. At La Familia and EverWell Health Systems, we strongly believe there is more than enough money to address these challenges. Like you, Madam Secretary, we believe the problem lies in deal flow. Whether it is finding a mental health patient with the proper paperwork to be placed into our housing from placement departments, or La Familia's identifying vulnerable individuals in the community who may be shielded by their own self-consciousness, their families, or their social network. Housing the homeless is not a financial problem in the state of California. To use a symphony analogy, the chairs are filled, and Madam, I hear that you have a full gallery ready to enjoy the music, but the percussionists are beating the drum wildly, the winds section is searching for the brass, and the first chair cannot find the rhythm. Meanwhile, Maestro is getting little help from the section leaders. I apologize. I was just at Handel's Messiah last month, and this performance left a lasting impression on me. In the interest of time, I will not, I'll let you guys review my panelists' resumes after the discussion. We'll get right to the first question. Panel, 12 years ago, my partner and I read a 2012 state report which indicated after years of study, that California needed 12,000 additional psych beds. We decided to add 1,000 beds. For perspective, at the time, UHS was the largest provider of mental health beds globally. They were in the UK and the US primarily, with approximately 26,000 beds. 11 years later, we have licensed 400 beds and operate around 200 beds. La Familia recognized the need for community-based services, and about 6 years ago began building a network of service providers that deliver care to 14,000 people and hope to reach 20,000 people in the community. Madam Treasurer, you were given 2 or more full well-funded buckets to solve these issues, but most jurisdictions only have the capacity to approve and monitor small boutique-style projects. I think all three of my panelists would agree it is frustrating to attend a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a project that took 7 years to complete and houses fewer than 10 people. As a panel, how can we adopt, approve, and build larger community-acceptable projects to meet the needs of a population?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for having me here today, and just to talk about maybe the state of California and how to be successful in California. Obviously, we're a big state. We've got 40 million people. We have 58 counties. Not all counties are the same, for starters. So everybody likes to start in LA and San Francisco. Those are probably the hardest cities to start in. And I always advise people, please go outside of those two cities and go to a jurisdiction that actually wants these type of solutions, that are willing to work with you. And so there's certain cities, certain counties that are more friendlier to new ideas. Maybe their budgets aren't as robust, and therefore they have to look more to public-private partnerships, because I know your model is not using the government money. Your money is really a private sector money, which is great. And if you're a city or a county that is a little more entrepreneurial, I think they're going to be welcoming you, and that's why you're in the cities that you are in, because you found that they're trying to solve a problem, they don't have the money, and they're open to new creative ideas, especially responsible business people, people like you who care about what you're doing. You do have a track record now, and so having that track record should open more doors in other communities. But which ones are they? And so that's where I might be of assistance, is to say, hey, I know you maybe want to go here because they say, oh, we've got a huge problem here. We're spending so much money, we can't solve it. But that may not be the best place to go. And so that's what I do, is I travel around the state and I try to figure out, who wants what, who is open, what the problems are, what the needs are, and whether, as the state, we can come in and assist. But usually we do need, more folks that want to invest in real estate, for example. And I know a lot of the family office types likes to invest in real estate. So there are properties that are available that want to rent out to the nonprofits, for example, who are doing the services, but they don't have their own building. I was just out in Tracy yesterday at the Tracy Community Connections, for example, and they are providing social services and free showers. They're going to have a washer and dryer for homeless individuals to come. And right now they're in an office building like this. The landlord's not happy. The tenants are not happy. They'd like to buy a building. They identified one that I think is under the state. And so I'm trying to see whether we can unravel some of the bureaucracy, because nobody knew who owns it. They couldn't figure it out. And so I made a couple of phone calls, and it's under the state. So we're going to see whether, and they would love to move into that, but they may not have money to buy that property. And so therefore they're going to have to go around to all of you and say, hey, who can do it? Or is the state or the county going to take the building over and then lease it out to them? But that means doing tenant improvements. And a lot of times they don't have the money, the nonprofit, the cities and counties don't want to do it. And so then everybody is stuck. So I think there is some, opportunities for us to, create those collaborations, understanding what you're all doing, trying to help us with problems. And then we also passed Proposition 1, which is a mental health bond, $10 billion. The governor announced yesterday that he is going to roll out that money quicker than expected, because especially of all the fires that happened recently, that there's going to be more need. And so he's expedited that. So, is there a way that you all can fit into one of those buckets to get some of that resources from that bond? I can try to help you. I'm still trying to figure out when we're going to issue the bonds and what it's going to go for. But again, connecting. If you want to do more with government, I can connect you with those players. And if not, we can look for opportunities, for, public-private partnership.
Just a quick question. I mean, I know you're from New York originally,
Yes.
so we have a lot of New Yorkers online, et cetera. How do you imagine public-private partnerships would work?
Well, it works. It just depends again, like on the local elected officials and especially the city managers. Some city managers are very, very creative and entrepreneurial, and some have been around for a long time. They like the status quo. Therefore, that sounds good, but we're not interested. So, that's also what you're going to get when you work with government is for us, we try to stay in government for 20 years. After 20 years, we'll get some small portion pension, but then we get free healthcare for life. So when you're dealing with people that work in government, they don't want to have their neck on the line necessarily. If something, if there's cost overruns, right? There's issues with contractors, then someone usually is to blame in government. And so that's why when you're working with government, they'll be like, that sounds great, but go talk to the city council. Like they don't want to take the lead. And that's also an issue is that there are not that many leaders that are willing to kind of put themselves out there.
Do you guys see like using opportunity zones? I mean, family offices would be interested in stuff like this if there was opportunity zones involved. I mean, are there many opportunity zones outside of Los Angeles and San Francisco that might, play a role in this?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of opportunity zones, but most of those projects that are looking in those opportunity zones are looking for a lot of money, like big pots of money to redevelop, a certain, portion of the city or, a lot of land.
And the opportunity zones are great, but that's a redevelopment play. There is a need, 30 miles from here in Livermore that isn't in an opportunity zone for housing for different populations. And the money that the Treasury is trying to deploy is into specialty housing. So I'll segue into, I didn't say in the beginning that I brought one nonprofit and one for-profit company so that we can get a little exposure to the differences. Both of these groups agree that there is enough money. Of course, Aaron is a nonprofit, so he's never going to admit that in public. He's going to tell you that they were always broke. But the truth is, there's if you're a smart nonprofit, there's always the opportunity to find the next program, and the state is really, really good at creating the next program. So go ahead and take it from there, Aaron.
You got it, bud. Aaron Ortiz, CEO of La Familia. Our legal name is the Alliance for Community Wellness. Our DBA is La Familia. And we also have other DBAs as well, Fetyko and First Behavioral Health out in the Central Valley. I'll remind everybody that being a nonprofit is a tax bracket. It's not a goal for us. We are here to make sure we cover our costs, that we bring in cash flow, and that we can hold our systems and grow them. When I first started 10 years ago with this company, I had about 2.8 million that I inherited annually. We're close to a $40 million shop. Now, if we had the cash flow or the investment from private equity or other folks, we could grow quicker. No matter what, at this point, between where we're at now and in the next 3 years, we'll reach 70 million a year. The key is making sure that the cash and the cash flows can come to us quicker, so they're not holding up projects. Now, when you look at Prop 1, 70% in any of the counties in California will go towards housing interventions. 30% of those funds will go towards outpatient and other sorts of behavioral health supports that the community may need. But
he's talking about ancillary buildings, not program.
Yeah. The point being is that I would argue that in any county, 3% of the highest utilizers, so those are the folks that you'll hear about, whether it's at BART here in the Bay Area or homeless folks, highest utilizers that are being picked up by law enforcement, are being picked up by the psychiatric or the local psychiatric facility, account for close to 40% of the cost in any single county. If we can really invest there, and that's what Prop 1 is designated to do, but the key is what people are going to ask is how quick are these projects rolling out? keep in mind, we have to worry about conditional use permits. We have to worry about those types of things. It's going to be cutting through the red tape. So the issue is not money. The issue is systemic change to make the money flow quicker. So I'll pause there.
And that's a great segue for us at EverWell. So EverWell serves that 1% of really the 3%, or what I would argue about 4%. So to reiterate,
Give or
what,
take.
yeah, what Aaron's saying is that 4% of the population that you are seeing as most visible, and maybe not even as visible because they're sitting in emergency rooms, tying up huge resources in trauma centers across the state, putting huge amount of fiscal taxings on rural health systems. They're sucking the lion's share from the state coffers, from county coffers, from county general fund. And so I would argue that projects that literally are focused on simply serving that population sometimes get bogged down in discrimination and stigma, but oftentimes it's just a basic misunderstanding of, well, who's there? And so I would say that the first thing we really have to do is challenge this binary thinking that the broader population was of people with serious mental illness. It's not folks that are homeless or just homeless, and it's not folks that are in jail or should go to jail. People that are in jail don't want to be in jail, and oftentimes people that are homeless want to be homeless. And that's a hard conversation sometimes for parts of our state government to hear. There's a lot of misplaced compassion in the work that we do. I would go one step further and say that, that there are these folks that are sitting in between, what we call at EverWell, these high cost beneficiaries. These are individuals that may cost $1 million or more to the local taxpayer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the state that's paying for state hospitalization. It's not the state that's paying for acute hospitalization. It's not the state that's paying for institutional based care. It is your local general fund in each of your counties that's financing this. And so when we think about it from the perspective of, well, how do we build larger communities that are acceptable in the broader community? At EverWell, we build communities, and that to me is that is the fundamental anchor point. Is if you focus on building housing, you're basically consolidating problems. If you're focusing on delivering services, but you're not providing housing, you're creating transportation issues, staffing issues, and so a lot of times because of zoning issues and conditional use permits, people choose to say, well, we'll just do an outpatient clinic. And then where they go at night, well, we don't have to worry about that because we open our doors at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Can I add something? La Familia, or the Alliance for Community Wellness, has had great partners at the Department of Healthcare Services. We've been funded for 3 contracts with BEACHA, a behavioral health continuum infrastructure program here with the state. And we've got about 16.7 million, right? But the key right now is for us to be able to roll that out in a way that makes sense for the community. And that's the other side of the coin, kind of like you were alluding to when it comes to working with cities and working with counties that are going to help us roll this out in a way that can make impact. Because when you're looking at the number of beds that each county needs, we're always running behind. So to get in front of it, that's why I was saying that a little bit earlier. We have to get the cash up front, draw down from it, and be able to roll it out as quick as possible. Because it just takes one person on the news to say, hey, here's the problem, right? And everybody sees it. I'll end with this. Our company's been around for about 50 years. My mom was the janitor of my company 42 years ago, and I'm lucky to say I've been the CEO for about 10 years, but I've been able to grow it. And the truth of the matter, kind of like, your company is, I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm looking at how I can help the community, but I'm also looking at how I can grow the organization. And partnership moves at the speed of trust, right? So when I'm looking at partnerships, when I'm looking at investors, when I'm looking at how I can move this forward, it's making sure that I'm jumping in with partners that know the risk that we're taking. Because money is one thing, but we're taking risk when it comes to insurance. We're taking risk when it comes to the type of consumer that we're bringing in and those costs. So that's something that we have to be upfront about as we move forward in this, because there's opportunity here, but there's also a lot of value in the partnership and how we can move it forward. I'll pause.
And I would just say, a lot of things are changing and you all are on the ground, so you understand firsthand. A lot of the legislators don't understand, right? My mom had depression all her life, and so I have a little bit more background and understanding about, how this works. And I started working with John Burton, years ago, and John Burton was all about helping those, homeless, foster youth, single moms. And so I would say you need to work with your legislators and let them know what the changes are that are happening and how government and funding needs to change as well. We all know that there's a gray tsunami, that we're all going to be living longer. I live with my dad who's 90 and still, very, very independent. And that's the model is, keeping people in their homes. But there are now smaller congregate providers, they provide like 6 rooms. So they are buying homes with 6 rooms so that they can take only 6, because that's what the maximum is. Now, someone just changed the law to increase it so that they can have 10. Now they need homes that have 10 rooms or, big rooms so that 2 people can share. So this is another way of, influencing policy. If you all see that, hey, government, if you go to your state or local leader in the health and human services or, mental health department, they're going to go, well, that sounds great, but they're not going to do anything unless they're forced to do something. And that's usually by policy and the legislators. So that's what I would say is, besides what we're talking about here, get out there, befriend a legislator, someone who may have experience in this field, show them what it is that you're doing, what is working, and how the system, the way it is, even though there's a lot of money there, it takes too long to deploy, too many hoops to jump through. They always want to ding you and fine you, and then that slows everything down. And so, I think that's also another angle, not only the money part, but you also have the policy.
When to speak to that, so we're speaking to La Familia takes care of people that are fosters, people that are mentally ill, people that are addicted, people that are just out of luck, people. The state treasury has a program for those people there, but in order to understand Prop 1, which will segue into the next question, they have a mandate to deploy that in a certain way. That the first 2 mandates are easy to find money for and easier to get permitting for if you have a private public partner. You cannot go to Moran and say, I'm going to house people that just came out of jail. They'll never allow it in 20 years. They will just keep asking you for more paper. That's not to say Moran doesn't do great with mental health. Great. I think they're one of the most progressive in mental health. They whenever we contract with them and whatever they ask or whatever we ask for, they say, hey, we'll give you twice as much. They're really, really a great county. If we have a problem with one of their patients 6 hours away in a different part of the state, hey, we're sending a car right now. How can we help? So there are stakeholders. All of us are stakeholders in a system. The reason I wanted to have this panel is to let you know that if you have an apartment building that you want, I've been pitched 2 or 3 times at JPM and here I've got buildings and I want to repurpose them and I want to turn them into a campus. Great. We just took some folks to Haven for Hope down in San Antonio. They took an entire city block that was warehouses and they've turned it into a city that houses and sorts many, many different types of people. So as we understand what Prop 1 money is in the first couple of phases is going towards, if you guys have buildings or if you want to invest in properties that are either in a redevelopment area or just properties that you think are going to create value. I'm in New York quite often and they're telling me, hey, Andy, the bottom's 2.5 years away here in the city of San Francisco. I'm looking around going, I think it might be a little sooner than that. I think, I'm getting optimistic about San Francisco, which I wasn't at all. So money's going to get more reasonable. Projects are going to get more reasonable. But we still have a problem when You have to go to a planning commission, you have to get an EIR. And you have to, if you bought 2 city blocks, you have to get an EIR for both city blocks, independent and separate of each other, have a native tribesman on both properties. You can see them there. I mean, it's literally, this room can be 2 projects and you'd have to do the duplication. So
Amy, what kind of returns do people get from co-investing with you?
well, they do very well. Yeah.
Like, could we talk about targets or no? Okay.
But I can tell you that, I guess generally I can say that with the, in our space, we can, out of cash flow from the building that we purchase, we can pay the building off in 24 months, give or take.
You know, I think something to add to that, when it comes to Prop 1, if it follows the same model that BCHIP did, the Behavioral Health Continuum Infrastructure Program that I referred to a little bit earlier. Prop 1, as Fiona mentioned, is going to put out about 10 billion, right? In that situation, if the business model is the same, as a contractor, you have to put up 10% of the cost, right? Part of the submittal with the RFP or the proposal is that the contract will cover 90% of the cost. So 90% of the cost to, do the construction, on-ramp it, and move it forward. Now, the commitment with that has been that you have a 30-year commitment from the county to guarantee you a contract. So you're securing a business line there. So if you want to talk about, the return of the percentages, I mean, just look at that percentage there. You're only putting up 10% of the money. What happens with organizations is, do they have 10%? Right?
What's the leverage?
So I'll give you an example. We bought a farm in Livermore, 10-acre farm. That total project is going to cost us about 7.6 million. We put down $760,000 of our own money.
And the rest came from the state?
The rest came from the state.
And is there any leverage on the 10% you put down?
Say that again?
Is the $760,000, was it all equity or did you put down 200,000 and borrow the rest?
No, it was all our equity. It was our cash flow. So that's why I was mentioning a little bit earlier. That's where we need investment when it comes to cash flow, because if we're going to keep growing these types of systems, that's where we would want part of the investment at. But the 10%, yeah, we put it down from our own reserves.
Where'd you get the rest?
It came from the state. It came from
Yeah,
Beach.
some
Yeah.
buckets, yeah. So you get 5% here and 90% there and 3% here and then some. So
I mean, we actually have just experienced like a 1-year process of NIH of trying to form a public-private partnership, which did not end well.
But that's a whole different, but go ahead.
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But to be systematic as a family office group, we want to establish public-private partnerships. We see all kinds of obstacles. Maybe there's ways to form partnerships. People already have the public-private partnership in place, right? So
100%.
I think there's an opportunity to underwrite time risk that isn't being done. So if you could underwrite the processing time, I think there's a market there that's never been tapped.
Mhm.
But when we were starting the company, one of our other board members is here, and David and I have been partners for many years. And he came from Carlisle. So Carlisle in the early days, they would bridge a defense contractor to get through this process. But if I go to Bank of America, or if I go to a normal bank to get a loan, not the SBA, not the SBA, then they will say to me, well, you only have a 1-year contract. Now we actually, Dr. Zubiotti has increased that. Now we have multiple years, but it's still not 15 years. So if I want a regular mortgage, I can't do that. So there is room. It just happens that I'm pretty good at financing debt, but if I wanted to put regular mortgages on, the contracting and where Carlisle made their mark is they understood that once you get that first contract, it doesn't get smaller. It doesn't go away unless you really mess.
So the state finances 90%. I mean, is it possible like for the state to establish like a warehouse line so that way you can be more systematic with just taking over these properties? Because I mean,
Ideally, yeah, that there has to be somebody that steps into that space. So there were two buckets of money that were put out prior to Prop 1, and we're starting to see some of those projects that were quote unquote shovel ready. So B-CHIP, the pot, the money that Aaron's talking about was about a $3 billion allocation. Competitive processes having to be organized through counties, having to have a county sponsor. In fact, Andy and I, we put up several of our own properties and said, we'll go ahead and put these into trust for 30 years. You just have to be willing to give us a 30-year commitment to contract.
I mean, we don't want to do that. I mean,
But what I'm saying is that the point is that the people that were ready to do this and could do this are like Aaron, they've already gone through their cash reserves.
I have David Robb here, and so I'm going to talk about the way that it would want to be structured, which is that ideally, so you're already getting 90% of your financing from the state. People will want to have a warehouse line, and a family office would come in and establish a line of credit. So let's say you want to take over $1 billion worth of real estate. So you're going to get 900 million provided by the state. So you've got 100 million of equity you have to come up with, but a family office would want to come in and maybe provide 50 million of that as a line of credit and have it recognized by the state as equity. Right?
Yeah, that
Ideally.
that does make sense. That's
Right. And,
that talks to what I
I'm
was saying.
borrowing it. This is not my original thinking. This is Sam Bellsberg, who is a real estate titan who lived in Palm Springs, who built Vancouver. And his idea was, why don't I give you a line of credit and then you recognize it as equity. I'll commit to say, putting it in a bank for 5 years and keeping it there. And you're going to give me 35% returns on that line of credit, right? So I'm just saying, I mean, there's ways to structure that are creative. The problem gets solved faster.
Surely does. It surely
Right?
does.
I mean, I'm just thinking outside the box because we're a family office group here. There's people that are online and there's, there's probably ways to solve things faster in the state.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is actually something that happened in the housing crisis after 2008, where the federal government came in and said, we'll recognize large lines of credit as equity to finance home mortgages.
I mean, Maureen said it yesterday pretty well in terms of, there's a lack of opportunity and then deal flow gets stuck and you got all this capital to deploy. Well, there's all this capital to deploy and all the traditional ways in which county government and public and private partnerships have done the work in the past. We've eaten all of that ability to do that up, whether it be a for-profit provider like Andy and ourselves or Aaron and his company. There just isn't any other opportunity to do that drawdown with these $10 billion that are coming.
So Madam Treasurer, so I think that the affordable housing starts early on, like going to college, right? Is there any plan or on the state level that thank you. Is there a plan or a at the state level to create more affordable housing around like for college kids, or is it more community or more university that so the family offices here and the affordable housing experts here can maybe form some kind of coalition together to support that along with the PPP?
Yeah, so everybody, right, affordable housing for homeless, formerly homeless, everybody understands that this is a top issue. And so I get a lot of investors that say, I want to get into affordable housing. I said, okay, can you wait 55 years? And they're like, what, 55 years? I mean, those are the covenants that we sign, regulatory agreements for affordable housing. So I tell them, don't get into affordable housing because that's really for, a different group with a different mindset. We definitely need housing around our college campuses. All the UCs, we're limited because number one, freshmen are supposed to have, a bed for freshmen, but then we can't expand the number of students we can take because we don't have those beds. So there's opportunities maybe with the UC, the CSU, especially the community colleges to build housing. Right now, community colleges are free for any first-time college attendee. And a lot of these young people now and their parents are saying, why should we send our kid to a 4-year college, go into high student loan debt when they don't even know what they want to major in? So now they're going, hey, let's send them to community college. And then if they do well, then they can pretty much automatically feed into a Berkeley or a UCLA. And then this way they'll know whether they want to stay there or maybe go work for some startup. But when you go to a community college, there's no housing. These are traditionally feeder schools. And if these community colleges now are specializing in AI, cyber, transportation, seniors, whatever it is, right? Because you're all going to partner with the community colleges because you all need people to work. Well, they want to go, but then where are they going to live? There's no housing around community colleges either. So they all live in their cars or couch surf
Get a
because it's
gym,
just
get
too
a gym
expensive.
membership or a shower.
Exactly. So that's what I would say for all of you, housing, even hotels. People need stem cell research. We passed 2 initiatives. We're the only, country, state, any region that has passed any sort of money for stem cell. I think it's like $6 billion. So all of the experts are coming to California, but they don't have anywhere to live. So how are we going to attract the best and the bright scientists and doctors and Nobel Peace Prize people when they come here and there's no place for them to live? So
Hour and a half commute to.
exactly. And nobody wants to do that. So that's what I would say for all of you that are interested in, real estate, definitely help us around, our college campuses. And if you're interested in building on the colleges, I think community colleges are ripe. We have 116 community colleges. They're all individually run and operated, meaning they all elect a 5-member board. They all have their own chancellor. They all have money because they're under Prop 98. So as long as the state is doing okay, 50% of our general fund goes K through 14. So community colleges are flush with money right now, but they don't have real estate experts. None of the trustees understand real estate. None of them are bankers or finance people. They're like community people. So that's an opportunity for you to partner with them.
I think where I started the conversation with Madam Treasurer was Larry Fink has a bunch of money. There are other guys that have a bunch of money to deploy. This woman has equally that much money to deploy, and it's really hard to do that when you're doing 10. You're going to build 2 houses or 2 apartments, or it's much easier to deploy those in bigger numbers. But she has to have partners that understand how to get the permitting and understand how to deal with NIMBY and can then sell it into an exchange where what you said is exactly what I was describing.
Yeah.
But in the interest
Call
of
me
time,
and say, hey, we've got this amount of money. These are the type of projects we like. And I will probably give you like 2 or 3 cities that are welcoming.
so let's get on to the second question.
We only have about 2 minutes left, so you know.
Oh, well, then I guess we're only going to get 1 question. You want to, okay. Questions from the audience?
Yeah. I'll repeat it, just if you just ask it, Dave.
So to say, Treasurer, thanks for coming. There are a lot of people online, so I don't want you to look in the room and think, oh, there's only 30 people here. So Marty always has several hundred people.
Yep.
On maybe 300, something like that online. But thank you for coming. And I think what I'd like to hear from you maybe is you're obviously very practical. And I love your pro-business approach. Every time I hear you speak, you always say California's open for business. And I have this image of you sitting in your office, ready to take calls for people who want to do business. So we're all about that. So we'd like to be supportive of you. I understand you're running for lieutenant governor. What can we do to be of help?
The question is, what can we do to be of help for a lieutenant governorship campaign?
Yeah. Well, obviously it's about money and votes. So, I don't come from a wealthy family, and so I have to just raise money, donor by donor, but it also is about exposure. The more I speak at these events, me, you're liking me on my Facebook and social media, you get me out to different events, because it does work. I'm going to be on the ballot maybe with 8 other people. And how are people going to vote? They're either going to say, oh, I've heard of that person, or I've actually met that person. That's the only one I know. That's who I'm going to vote for. So that would be helpful. And then for me, it's about economic development, getting projects done. Then I can go to that ribbon cutting and go to that groundbreaking with you. And, because as a business CPA, I want California to thrive. I want people to do business here. It's not easy, but I'm willing to be that liaison. And if you can be successful, then collectively we're all successful.
You should do a dinner party in New York.
We're working on that already, Marty.
Fantastic.
No, I definitely want to say thank you to, our partners here, EverWell, And I want to let everybody know that, you know, La Familia and EverWell are open for business as well, and we want to partner with you. We want to engage in dialogue where we can invest in the community and also have return for partners who partner with us. So let's sit down, let's figure it out. Again, the money is there. It's really about how we coordinate our resources and improve workflows. And thank you, Fiona, for being here. Pleasure.
Fiona, thanks so much.